A quick note before this video begins, the Allay has now been added to Java Edition. This video was recorded before that took place, however it changes nothing about the video and we're going to find an awesome use for the Allay Mob. Hello everyone and welcome to a video about the Allay Mob which will be added in 1.19, the Wild Update. I think I've got a potential fantastic use for this mob which we are going to investigate in this video. But first of all, a brief reminder of what this mob does in case you haven't seen it yet. It's able to pick up items that are lying around in the ground and take them to a location. That location can be the player or the nearest note block that is activated. Now in its current implementation, which is still under development, the Allay has some flaws. It tends to aimlessly fly around. It can be a little tricky to actually click on it and try and give it an item to pick up. And if you're mining blocks and using the Allay to pick them up and bring them to you, as you can see, they kind of get right in your face as they're in front of you picking up the blocks, the very ones that you're trying to mine. So in terms of development, I think the Allay still has a long way to go, but currently there is one type of farm in this game that I think it might be perfectly suited for. And the timing of this video couldn't have been any better because a few days ago we got the Secrets of Minecraft, the Allay video from Mojang over on the Minecraft channel. This video shared with us some prototype screenshots which are interesting to look at. This was from when the mob was known as the Wisp, so before being called the Allay, it had a different name. So not only was there screenshots, there was also some early prototype footage of the Wisp's development. In this stage, the Wisps would take items directly to the hoppers, and one of the things that they do here, when they don't have items to pick up, is they actually sit in the spot where they're supposed to collect the items. I wish that had stayed because the way they fly around is a little crazy. And anyway, this then led to them using note blocks eventually to tell the Wisps where to go. So in this game we have several ways in which to collect items, and sometimes it's just bringing the items to the player. But if we want to automate things, we've got hoppers, we've got hopper minecarts that can move around on rails, then we've got water streams which can bring items to a certain location, and you could even use a flying machine to push along a bunch of items that are on a level surface. So the question is, when are none of these things useful? When could the Allay be the best alternative? And the answer, I think, is to head underground. That's right, an amethyst geode. And to better show you what the problem here is, I think that we should head over to the Hermitcraft Season 8 World download. So in this season I did indeed construct a farm for the amethyst geode, and we should be clear, we're talking about the shards and not silk touching the clusters. That would obviously require the player, whereas the shards can be automated, which is something that I attempted right here. And this was an absolute pain that took me a long time. You see, the amethyst geodes are always unique from one to the next, so when you build a farm for them, it's going to be unique each and every time, and it's a process of placing down lots of pistons so that they can hit the clusters, turn them into shards. You need a water stream to collect them, and it's a bit of a nightmare. And that's because you have to make a whole bunch of decisions to try and optimize the amount of pistons that you've got in here, the amount of shards that you can collect, and it's a ton of little individual decisions. It's tricky to place all the pistons in the correct place. And then after all of that, you've also got to go ahead and power all of them as well. So you end up with a jumble of redstone all over the place like this. So for this farm, I actually built 2 levels for it. And along the way, I remember sacrificing a few of the budding amethyst blocks which the shards can grow on because they were just simply in the way of placing pistons. So does this place look familiar? We're now in the same world except on Bedrock Edition. And I converted the world, and unfortunately I messed up a bunch of the pistons. We're going to leave these ones down the bottom alone, but most of the ones up here I have manually replaced. And the idea here is that maybe we don't need a water stream to collect these items. Maybe the Allay can do that work for us. And if so, it might give us more flexibility in how we place all of the pistons, not worrying about where the items end up, as of course the Allay can fly to wherever the items are. So future me dropping in from the editing room just to say I am so stoked for how this video turned out. It was really great. So make sure you subscribe if you want to catch more quality videos like this. And now let's get back to it. Okay then, I've added a collection point here powered by the note block. And then I decided to box in the area around, as you probably wouldn't want your Allays getting stuck outside of the farm. It then also occurred to me that an easy way to give them the item that you want is to have them trapped, which is something you're going to be able to do in creative, because I've simply just spawned them into here. So I think that one's actually holding a shard. Yeah, there we go. Let's release the other ones too. So now they're going to stay in this area, and we can press this button over here to harvest the shards. And as you can see, only one of them dropped, but the Allay brings it straight over. Fortunately for us, this stuff is based on random tick speed, so if I speed this up 100 times over, you can see immediately the amethyst geodes are starting to grow again. And this just makes my life a little easier, as now when we press the button, nothing happens. Oh, it's very laggy, I guess. So let's go ahead and try that again. It looks like all the pistons are not being activated, but items are getting picked up, and the Allays just bring them straight over here. Now what we're seeing so far isn't too different from just having a water stream coming across the bottom, right? Because I've designed this farm so that all of the items simply drop straight down. So now I want to go and design one with the Allay picking up the items in mind and see where it takes us. So now we're in a beautiful musical geode. And this one is about a medium-sized one, but because I am in creative mode, we're going to take advantage of commands here. So what we do is take the coordinates of a block that's outside the corner of the geode, and the opposite corner is in a flooded ravine. Of course it is. So then we remember the coordinates we had and put in these coordinates. So then we tell the game that we want to replace all the stone with air blocks. And we repeat the process for smooth basalt, and then calcite, and basically you can see where this is going. And here is what we end up with. Of course, you can do all of this in survival, and then the next stage is to basically place down the pistons, find a way to get power to them, but this time you don't really have to worry so much about where the drops will land, because, you know, the Allays are going to fly around and pick them up. And I am learning very quickly here that this might just enable us to hit many more sides of each of these blocks at the same time. That being said, we will have to power all of these pistons too, so it may be a little more challenging than I first suspected. And there will probably be a variety of ways to power certain blocks, but I like this. We can use the observer being updated to send a pulse downwards, so if I put the next bit of redstone here, it'll be able to get to that piston. So it really is turning out to be quite a challenge to look at all the different sides of the block and make sure that they're all being covered. Not only that, you also want to make sure the Allay has a way to pathfind to each of the different spots. And the whole time I'm doing this, I'm realizing that creative mode makes this very easy to build. If you're doing this in survival, the amount of finagling, moving around, trying to get to the different sides of these blocks is probably going to drive you mad. And so when it gets to a big cluster of blocks together like this, the piston placement is especially crazy, but then you've also got to run the redstone over all of it, which I'm sure is going to give me a problem here. Also, it seems like on Bedrock, the redstone connects itself to the piston like that, which I don't think happens on Java Edition. That actually means that powering that then is a lot easier because the redstone running alongside it points into the piston. That's definitely different. And here is my first use of the target block, which I kind of realise actually doesn't need to be a target block. So, yeah, that gets down to that one. And so, believe it or not, for this first cluster so far, every single side of the block has been accessed, and the Allay, in theory, can come along and pick up all of those drops. And I think for the sake of my sanity and time, I'm going to rule out some of these easier ones around the edge here. Just going to knock these out and just focus on some of the bigger clusters and see if we can do it there too. So that's going to leave us with all of these, which I'm going to hook up to the farm. But first of all, a quick analysis. When you don't have a lot of crowding around the amethyst, it's pretty easy just to run redstone around the back like this. When things get tight and complicated, it is certainly more challenging, but I noticed that target blocks become very useful, especially for powering multiple pistons, and also there are other ways in which you can use observers, like for sending a signal around the corner when this piston activates. And here's another great example of using an observer just to get a signal down to this piston. And if I'd have known that from the beginning, this thing might have ended up being a lot more compact. But now, let's get it ready for the Allay. So the calcite is a lovely block, but scaled out like this, it's a bit garish to look at, and maybe I could have concealed more of the area where the Allays don't need to go, but then it'd be harder to see what they're up to in this instance. So I've left it nice and open. We've configured all of these Allays to be holding shards, and there is a collection system just behind me, And now these things are going to get to work when I activate the farm, and then it's a case of observing and seeing how well of a job they do. So obviously there's a load that fall to the ground that are going to be easy pickings, and you can just see them going in there and picking them all up. Of course, they're picking up as many as they can before they drop them off. So the time spent with items on the ground is actually kind of minimal. Look at that. I think they've got pretty much everything in one go. It also looks like a couple of pistons didn't fire off. So where I've made the occasional adjustment, it looks like a couple of pistons around the back there didn't end up firing. And just look at the drops that we've collected. That's clear evidence that this works. While it's all growing back, I forgot to mention there was actually like one spot somewhere nested right here. I think it's that bit that there was no way for a piston to reach. So there are occasions where the amethyst blocks can actually stop you from getting a piston on every side. Otherwise, every single side here has been covered. And we are now ready for our second harvest. Let's go ahead and do that. There's also the possibility of the pistons damaging an allay if it's in the area, but I am super stoked with how well this works because they just get all of the items no problem, and they even get them really quickly. All of them are gone already, and now they're depositing over here, and look at that, loads of the stuff. Actually, I think they're doing a little bit of juggling right now where one throws it in and the other one starts picking them up mid-air. You saw it right there. There was another little exchange. So a slight problem with delivering them to the hoppers, I guess. And I think now another problem is that the hopper is full up. Either way, this has been an absolute success. But what do you think? Let me know in a comment down below what you think about this whole idea. I think this is possibly one of the best uses for the allay. It was really great to see it in action. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. Thanks as always for the support, and I'll see you soon with another one. Bye bye.